Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who may or may not have spent his entire afternoon making photoshops of Deebo Samuel in a Patriots uniform. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing good. I didn't even bother doing it this time because I know the Patriots aren't going to pay for it. So
right.
I know it's going to happen. And honestly, I've been so balls deep in NBA playoff stuff. I almost forgot the draft was a week away. Let's go.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, the playoffs. I've been keeping up with the NBA playoffs. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed that happening a little bit earlier. I think this year, right?
Feels a little bit earlier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe hockey's later. I don't know how, but I feel like in the past, right? Anyways, we can talk about that later. Draft a week from tomorrow, Kyle.
Yeah. Lots of storylines. Now, obviously, we have this Deebo Samuel conversation where how does that change the landscape of the draft? What picks are being given up in that situation? Lots to talk about, I feel like.
Yeah, plenty to talk about. Today, what we will be doing is ranking the top offensive players in this draft, other than, of course, quarterbacks, because we've already done that for a podcast. So we're wrapping up. We're going to do running backs, then tight ends, then offensive line, and ending it with wide receivers. And then we will have our thoughts on all of those guys, some honorable mentions. I think we have some hot takes here, specifically into wide receiver and halfback stuff. So we'll bookend with some hot takes, at least from my end, Kyle.
Yeah, I think I have some hot takes on here too. So, we'll start with the running backs. I do have some questions before we start the wide receiver portion, but obviously that's going to be at the end. I feel like if you're in this draft this season looking for a wide receiver or defensive end, you've come to the right draft.
Yeah.
I feel like if you've come for anything else, you're going to have some trouble.
That's a very fair point. And let's just transition that with running backs. Kyle, I think this is the rough running back class.
Yes.
I think I don't have a single one of these guys with a day 2 grade on them, let alone day 1.
I have 2 that I see second or third round. I think I think it's a big drop off from there. There's 2 guys that I think are going to be good NFL players. The rest of them, I'm not entirely sure. A lot of these guys find roles in the league, honestly. I think there's 2 that could be every down backs potentially. But that's a potential. It's not like there's not a knockout prospect to me.
Yeah. I also think there's a number of guys for me that there's probably 10 or to 15 guys who I think you'll be an okay backup for a couple of years. If you need that, you have that. So that's kind of why I feel get someone in the 6th round. You should be okay. You want to start off with number 5?
Yeah, go for it. Number 5, who you got?
Number 5, give me the BYU halfback, Tyler Algier. And again, I want to be very clear. These are guys who I have, I think, at best, the highest grade I have on any running back is a 4th round grade on, just so you know where I'm at. And, he's a guy who has power. Ran a 4.6 40, so isn't going to wow you with his speed by any means. And he's not huge either at just 5'11", although he's built 224 for his height. That helps. He's okay blocker, solid receiver. He's not incredibly explosive, but he's someone who I think can find a role in the league.
Yeah, I actually have him at number 5 too. I think he's, like you said, there's a role for this kind of player in the league. He's going to be short yardage situation. Red zone situations, I think he'll be very good. And he's just a power runner. He's one cut and go. He, like you said, he's not the tallest guy, but he is a lot to handle. He's tough to bring down. He's well built, like you said. He's tough. He's strong. I think he's going to find a nice role in this league and hang around for a few years off of that. And, I always just kind of like these players. You look at the LeGarrette Blunts, the Ramondre Stevensons, those kind of guys, I think just They find a way to be productive, and they're going to have good carries, and they're going to be, I don't think he's going to be in a starting running back, but he could be a guy who comes in and is a 2nd down or 3rd down running back who's getting 5 yards a carry.
Yeah, exactly. LeGarrette Blount, one of the many legendary players to play for both the Buccaneers and Patriots. Probably the most well-known player to play for both those 2 teams.
He's the only one I can think of, honestly.
Yeah. It seems like it's just Nick Folk, of course, the other one.
Yeah, that's right. Best kicker of all time.
Right. I don't have too much else to add about Algier, but that's, again, kind of what I like about some of these guys. It's I can see it. I can see you being a role player. I don't think you're going to be a star, but I can see you being a role player. Whereas I think there's a couple other guys who didn't make my list who I feel like people are kind of dreaming about a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of it feels projection based, and like
Hmm.
I'll tell you what, someone who's not on my list, I'll just bring it up, and it's like he's rated higher than Algier in a lot of rankings that I see is like a Kyron Williams type, and it's like okay, you get the best version of Kyron Williams. Sure, he can be a good running back, but I just don't see a scenario where a 5'9" running back who's running a 4'6" as well, maybe a little better, is gonna like find a role in the NFL. I think there's a lot of guys that projection based could be good, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's move on. Number 4. This might be a surprise. Let's see what you think about this. Give me Brian Robinson, the Alabama running back, who I like him. Kyle. Again, he's a powerful runner. He's someone who can definitely run someone over, and I feel like he just finds a way to get through gaps. And his blocking isn't gonna again wow you, but when he's in position, he's good, and he is a bigger guy at 6'2", 225. So same weight as Algier, but got a few inches on him, which helps. He's not overly explosive, isn't going to do much in the receiving game, but again, as a backup halfback who can come in and be maybe a 3rd and 1 guy, that's what I like about him.
Yeah, I didn't have him on my list, but I get it. I think that there is a role. I think he's kind of just Algier light for me because the problem is like, oh, I don't know what that was. The problem that I have with Robinson is, like you said, he can't block, he can't catch, and I mean that's basically it. I mean,
Right.
I think he could run up the middle and like churn out a few yards, but I think just overall, like I bet on Algier developing more skills than Robinson because I don't see any more skills besides being able to run and hit some guys. I think as far as
Hmm.
Robinson goes, I think there's a big learning curve to develop some more skills for him.
Interesting. Yeah, I liked him a little bit more as a runner than I guess you did. I thought he was a solid runner. And again, the blocking for me, it was more so just like I feel like that's something I think he can learn. It still is concerning because not everyone learns it. But again, in a weak halfback class, I put him at 4.
Yeah, I get it. I have him just off, but yeah, I mean, there are some things to like there, and I think there's just I think my 3 and 4 guys, I don't think like have the upside, but I liked a lot of their skill sets, and they showed they could do a lot of different things. That's the reason I had them above.
Yeah. All right. Number 3. I think this will be another. This will be a hot take. Someone who I think some people have as number 1 underboard. I am going Kenneth Walker here at 3. Kind of similar to how I feel about Brian Robinson. Now he's a great pure runner. Kenneth Walker is. Walker's. If we're just talking how you run with the football, he's probably my number 1 guy in this class. He's explosive. He's shifty. But Kyle, I get a lot of Ronald Jones vibes with Kenneth Walker. He is not a blocker at all. Some other issues. He's not much of a pass catcher. He also didn't run a ton of routes, most of his flat routes. So that's kind of maybe an unknown. And my other issue, I thought sometimes his legs would move faster than his eyes. He's trying to shoot through a gap that hasn't developed yet. So that kind of was a thing. But the running aspect of him is good. It's just that's kind of what else does he have?
Yeah, I had him number 2 just because I do think he's the best runner in this class, like you said, and it is the
Mhm.
running back. I am a little concerned about the blocking. Is he going to be able to play in passing situations? I'm not sure. I actually think I don't know. Like he didn't have to catch the ball a lot at Michigan State, but
Mhm.
I just watching him, I feel like he'd be a good pass catcher. And that's
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
fair.
huge projection
Mhm.
based thing. I just feel like that he kind of seems like he has some decent hands and would be able to do it. But he
Mhm.
hasn't had to do it a lot, so I'm not sure. But yeah, I do think he's the best runner. He's incredibly shifty. He's explosive, and he's just got a ton of speed too. So I'm a big fan of Walker. I do have him at 2. This is probably one of the 2 running backs I'd look at in the 3rd round.
Interesting. So what's the dreams? I guess what's the team that should draft a Kenneth Walker? Is it almost? I mean, is this like a Tennessee team to draft him behind Derrick Henry? Is because I guess my issue is like I feel like if you're going to draft him, you kind of have to be a relatively run heavy team, right?
I would say so. I'm trying to think here. Um, yeah, I would say he probably has to end up on like a
Here's one. What about like a Philadelphia? That would
yeah.
be an interesting fit, right? Where you get to run it a lot, and also you don't, Hurts can kind of get around pressure even if you blow a blitz pickup, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good fit as well. I think that's a good fit. I think if I mean Cleveland has so many running backs, I guess they don't really need that, but that's something also they could do.
Baltimore also comes to mind of kind of for similar reasons. That would be interesting, especially with the speed of him and Lamar. That would be interesting. So in the right scheme fit, he might end up being a running back around 1, but there's just some issues here as well. Let's go to number 2. I think again, another warm take here. He's someone who plenty of people do have number 2 on their board, but usually that's because kind of Walker is number 1. or back and forth. Breece Hall, my number 2 running back here. There's a lot I like about Breece Hall. I think that, I mean, quite frankly, there's nothing I don't like about Breece Hall. I think that he does pretty much everything well. I didn't really see the 4.39 speed. He is pretty quick. I didn't see him as that quick on tape. But, he runs halfback routes well. He is explosive. He does have good vision. He'll take his time to get through a gap on specific moments. Maybe occasionally we'll try to, get in open space too much when it's not there, but he's good in open space. So I get it. Good enough blocker. There's a lot to like about Breece Hall.
Yeah, I do have him at number 1. I think he's the most well-rounded. I think he has the best hands in this draft too. And I just think that he's shown to be good at everything. I do have him at number 1 for that reason. And like you said, is the concern that is there not enough flash to his game that it's gonna, we'll see. I think it's possible, but at the same time, I think in a weak running back class, he stands out at number 1 for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Again, he's running back number 2, but I just don't know. I don't know if he has elite traits in really any area. I think that he's really good at a lot of different stuff, and that's cool. And that I would take that over someone who, like Kenneth Walker, is elite in some areas and bad in others. But for someone like Breece Hall, he'll definitely get some playing time. He'll be a solid contributor to your team. But just what's his ceiling? And for a running back to really move the needle, I think you have to be at least elite at some stuff, which I don't really see. Some people do see him elite at some stuff. I just don't.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think that, I don't know. I think he could develop into elite stuff. I think he can. I really do think he's a good pass catcher too. And I just think some of this stuff's going to translate for him. And I think he's going to be pretty good. I don't know if he's going to ever end up as like a top 15 running back in football, but I think he's going to be someone who's going to be a good starter for a number of years.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't think that's crazy. But again, what's the value in like that player too? Like when do you draft that player?
Right. I mean, that's the biggest question. I would say, let me think here. I mean, I'm definitely like, if I'm a team, I wouldn't draft him until the 3rd round. I think you could make an argument for a team like Buffalo, who might feel like they're still just a running back away from being a complete football team, to say, okay, 2nd round pick. I don't even know if they have a 2nd round pick. 2nd round pick, we'll throw it at Breece Hall. We'll fill out our roster that way, and then we're good to go. I think he'd actually, work on that team pretty well too. So that's kind of the scenario where I see him going earlier, but I wouldn't draft him earlier if I'm just like, I wouldn't want like the Jets or something to take him, because it's like, why take a running back early?
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. In fact, actually, I did a 2-round mock draft that I've yet to release, but I actually did that. I had the Bills with their 2nd round pick, late 2nd round pick, kind of reaching on a, sort of a luxury pick just because I felt like they could afford it. So that's funny. That's what you bring up. Because to me, I feel like that's the maximum value. But take out the perfect situation, probably maybe I had sort of early 4th, 3rd around there. Let's go to number 1, Kyle, because I think some people are going to be wondering who's number 1 here. Then, if you don't have, give me Damien Pierce, running back from Florida. I like Damien Pierce. I think he's good. Again, part of me is I probably feel pretty similar to Damien Pierce as other people do. I just am not as high on Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker. Maybe that's part of it. But he can block and receive. He is a guy who can be a 3-down back. He's shifty. He's explosive. He has good vision. He would be used as a fullback at time, which is interesting. So it makes me wonder if, he'd be good if a Lamar Jackson kind of as a guy who will go out and block, which I think could be interesting. Smart player. And my only real negative from Damien Pierce is something that you could argue is a positive. My negative is he only had 970 snaps in 4 years, but maybe that's a positive because he doesn't have much wear and tear on his body. So I like Damien Pierce. Kyle, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have him at number 6. I think the problem I have is that he's a little slow for my liking. Mm-hmm. And then I understand the thing is that, okay, low reps, that helps. But isn't it a little weird that he was never like a certified defined starter in college football? Like, that seems a little weird that he's just not like a starter ever.
It is. Yeah, no, that is the weirdest thing. And that's why it is in my negative column. It's just because, why didn't this guy get more snaps? It seems like his tape was good. Like, does he have an endurance issue? I don't know. You brought up speed. Yeah, the 4.59. He's not going to wow you with speed. I did find him explosive, though. Again, those first 5 yards, I thought he did a good job. So he might not be able to turn might not be able to get too many 75-yard touchdowns, but I think he'll be able to turn a lot of, 3-yard gains into 6-yard gains.
Yeah, but I do think the good thing is, and also, being from Bainbridge, shout out to Bainbridge High School. That's pretty cool. I think the good thing with Pierce too, yeah, you have no idea what that means. It's okay.
Mm-mm.
Listen, I think the good thing too, also potentially, is that it forced him to become a better pass catcher too. And I thought he was very good at that because he got a lot of reps catching the ball out of the backfield earlier in his career. So I feel like he's kind of well rounded. He's rounded out his game a little bit that way. Like I said, I think there are some concerns. That's why I have him just off the list. But I could see the upside there to where he really becomes the guy in this draft. But it would just be weird. I still feel like to go from not really playing ever to being the best running back in this draft class.
Yeah, but I guess what I would say is like I've seen enough head coaches in college make dumb decisions with not giving someone enough playing time that I'm not like I still go back to Urban Meyer not starting Joe Burrow, right? Like that kind of hurt Burrow's draft stock a little bit. Still went 1-1, but that was kind of a negative against him. And then that's one example that might be the exception, not the rule. I haven't ran a study on it, but it feels like I've seen enough of those that I'm not willing to. It's a concern and it's fair to bring up, but I like the positives enough that again in this week draft class I would have him one.
Yeah, completely get it.
Yeah. Jaden Evans in the comments saying Damien Pierce is underrated, but I still lean more towards Breece Hall. That's fair. I have them all kind of in a similar boat. So those are the running backs. Ready to move on to tight ends?
Do you want the other guys on my list?
Oh yeah, of course. What am I doing? It's not just my show. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. What are the other guys on your list?
You're good. I have Isaiah Spiller third. He's slow, but I just want this guy on San Francisco. Outside zone scheme guy. I think he's going to fit perfectly there. Get Isaiah Spiller to San Francisco, and I think he's going to have a good career because it just fits his scheme perfectly. And then I think a guy who's actually going super underrated in this draft, I really like Kennedy Brooks. Every time I see Kennedy Brooks play for Oklahoma, I'm like, this guy's a good running back. He runs the ball well. I think he blocks well, too, because he was asked to do that a lot at Oklahoma. And also, he can catch the ball. I really like Kennedy Brooks, and I think he's going to be a steal in this draft. Probably undrafted.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, we'll put a pin in that one. Pay attention if your team ends up getting him. That's interesting. All right. Tight ends, number 5, Cade Otton here. I should also bring up with tight ends. There's 4 guys I like. The 5th guy, not so much. 4 guys I think are all day 2 picks, and 3 of them are second round picks. So I like them. There's no one I love. There is no Kyle Pitts. I don't think there's even a Pat Fryer move in this draft class, but there's a Cade Otton if you want him. He's a solid frame. He can block. He's a solid route runner. He can get into his spot versus zone fine enough. He's from Washington, 6'5", 250. Just not explosive and not really outstanding at anything. He's someone who I think can find a role in the NFL to some degree, but what is that role? It might just be it might be a special teams guy, honestly, but that's where I have him.
Yeah, like you said, not a great tight end class, but it does seem like that there's a couple guys at the top and then everybody else. I'm okay with Otton. I think, like you said, he seems pretty fundamentally sound. Like he doesn't seem like particularly great at anything, but he seems like a pretty sound fundamental player that's going to fit the scheme. I just feel like this guy's going to end up on Seattle because Seattle just takes these Washington tight ends. So he's going to end up playing there for like 5 years.
Right, exactly. And but like not 5 straight years. Like he'll play 3 years, go away for 2 years, then come back and play for 2 more years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Next on the list, Jeremy Ruckert. I'm interested in Ruckert, and he's someone who I could be sleeping on. I'm going to acknowledge this right off the bat because one of the weird things about him was it felt like he was solid in the receiving game, but it's like never like had him do anything. He only averaged 3 targets a game. So like it was just he wasn't really used in that pass happy Ohio State offense, which was odd. He's a big guy, 6'6", 250. Most of these guys are going to be big. I think he's a good blocker and he runs fine setup routes, especially. Like that's kind of the one thing I noticed. That's pretty much all he was asked to do in the passing game. So seems like he could be good, but there is definitely a projection here with Ruckert. But I do still have a 3rd round grade on him.
I have him too. I have him second on this list.
I see it. Yeah,
because I think, like you said, he went to probably the worst school to be a tight end at. Like they don't throw to tight ends ever. This is a school that has. I mean, we're gonna get to this. That it has potentially 2 top 5 receivers in this class. It's got next year potentially the top receiver in the class. He just didn't get the ball. And I think the
Yeah.
one thing that did is it helped him develop a blocking game that I think is actually pretty good now. And he
Hmm.
also had some pretty insane catches. He had a one-handed catch in one game that just came out of nowhere. I think he's a really talented tight end, and I think there's a ton of upside here with this kid. I like him. I didn't put him at one just because the guy who I have at number one, I think is clear cut number one.
Hmm.
But I have him at two because I think there's a ton of upside with this player.
Yeah, the upside, if we're doing ceiling, his ceiling might be one.
Yeah.
But I still did feel like there are some concerns I just have with him of just the fact that he wasn't used in the passing game too much. And it's not, I didn't think he was getting wide open down the field and that guys were just weren't throwing to him anyways. But again, how much of that is scheme? When he's getting asked to just get a linebacker to follow him, like you don't want separation in that scenario. So like it's
Yeah.
hard to really give him too much. But yeah, that's how I feel about him.
Yeah, I mean, just the Ohio State game is spread the ball out, and then they're clearing space in the middle for the receivers to get wide open. I
Hmm.
think he played a role there, and I think he did it pretty well. And I think that under the right circumstances, he could have a bigger role and be pretty good. But it's also kind of projection again because we haven't seen him have to do all that stuff.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. Whoever gets him could get a potential sleeper there. With all these tight ends, my top four, there could be potential sleepers. Number three, Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina, 6'5", 245. Not the fastest guy, ran a 4.68, which is fine for his size, but it's not, not overly fast. But really, I mean, you watch him play. He looks like a receiver. I mean, he's out.
Mhm.
He makes these contested catches well. He can run routes well. Not amazing at the route running aspect, but like solid at it. He's not overly fast, and you see it on tape. But like as a receiving tight end, I think he could be a good receiving tight end. Kind of if you're a team who already has a tight end one and needs someone to kind of complement him, that's how I feel Likely could come in.
Yeah, I also have him three. I do think, he looks a lot faster when he plays. He looks a lot faster than what his 40 time was. And it just seems like he's quick off the ball. He makes some really nice catches too. Huge frame, which obviously helps. And I agree. I don't think he's going to do much blocking wise, but I do think that there is a good pass catcher here. And I think he fills that role kind of, I'm trying to think, like what Ed Dixon type maybe or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking maybe like maybe it's just because I'm a Tampa Bay fan and bring everything back to Tampa Bay. But maybe like a Cameron Brate type of like someone who can just come in and do to run routes, be a good third down guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
Hmm.
definitely think he can fill that role well. And I think he's got good hands too. So I think
Hmm.
there's a lot to like here. And, he's going to look a lot more like a receiver, I think, than a tight end, like you were saying.
Yeah, and he was good in college too. So he was
Yeah.
good college player. That helps. Better to be good than bad. Number two, Greg Dulcich out of UCLA. Did I say that right? Dulcich.
Sure.
Okay, yeah. Greg, good old Greg, a little bit smaller, 6'4", 243. Didn't have his best year in 2021, but the thing about him, and the reason why I liked him and put him at number two, was like no one got more open than Dulcich last. Like the time when he would get open, like it would just be like there's no one near him like at all. And I'm like, how are you getting this open? And part of it is he was a skilled route runner. His route running definitely can get him open. And I think he'll be able to, find ways to get separation at the NFL level. You might notice kind of a trend with this, the way I evaluate tight ends. I care about receiving more, which is why I kind of have some of these receivers higher up because he's not a blocker. Don't ask him to block. That's not what you want him to do. He's not. He's another guy who's kind of, very similar to Likely. He's a receiving tight end through and through, but I think it could be a pretty solid one.
Yeah. I do like him. Like you said, this is kind of a 4 tight end draft. And
Hmm.
even that, I'm not very comfortable with the 4, but I had him at
Uh-huh.
4 on my list. The concerns, like I said, he's not going to be in any blocking situation, like you were saying.
Yep.
But you can get blocking tight ends later in the draft or undrafted too, even.
Hmm.
So that's not something I'm overly worried about. I think the problem is he's open, but can he catch? That's what I'm worried about.
Fair.
He had a lot of
Uh-huh.
drops.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so I think that's the one concern. I'm sure he can, fix some of that stuff and get better. But I think that's the one concern of why I had him below Ruckert and Likely.
Yeah, I think that is totally reasonable. Number one, everyone's number one, Trey McBride out of Colorado State University. He is the consensus one. You know, guy who he can make contested catches. He's a physical player. I mean, he get doubled constantly and still find ways to come through and make plays. He's not a route runner. He doesn't even try to route run. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you can get some better value out of that, or maybe it's a bad thing, and maybe there's a reason why he hasn't been able to route run. It's because he's not good at it. But he did a lot very well. I still have him as a second round pick. I don't think he's not someone who strikes me as like a superstar type tight end, but he can definitely do every aspect of the tight end. And if you're a tight end needy team, he's someone to make sure you grab in the second round.
Yeah, I think this is the guy who I would kind of put in that Freiermuth category a little bit. I think he's close. I think he's closer than, like, he's got good speed. He's got good hands. He was asked to do a ton at Colorado State too. He was the focal point of their offense.
Sure.
And I think he can block too. So I think he's a well-rounded player. I think he can do a little bit of everything pretty well. And I think he excels at catching in traffic too. So I think he can do a lot of things well. And yeah, I mean, he's the clear-cut number one, I think, of this draft.
Yeah, I would have Freiermuth a little bit better. Just thinking about how I viewed Freiermuth last year, I feel like Freiermuth was certainly a better receiver than I think McBride was. But McBride's good, and it's not far off in terms of just the prospects, not the players themselves.
Yeah, I think they're a little closer. That's all. I think that he can be. I think he's capable of being a good starting caliber tight end. I don't know if he's ever gonna. He doesn't seem like he's gonna hit the, Mark Andrews type, or even going further to like the Kelsey level or anything like that. But I think he can be a very good tight end in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, who knows the tight end? Sometimes it's not the easiest position to evaluate. Let's move on. Do you have any other tight ends you want to talk about?
Who did I have at 5? I had Jake Ferguson.
Okay.
I didn't really love the 5 spot for anybody. I saw Jake Ferguson played a bunch at Wisconsin, and I know he can catch, and I know he can, get open pretty well too. So I think, and I feel like Wisconsin tight ends are a safe bet. So I had him at 5, but don't love the situation for any of those guys.
Yeah, like I said, a 4 tight end draft.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right, offensive line now. Let's go here. Offensive line, I think, is a very fun draft class, and I think there's high end guys here. I think that this is the one other. You talked about how it's a good draft if you need an edge rusher or a wide receiver, nothing else. I think it could be a good draft if you need an offensive lineman, especially if you have a high pick.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I do think there's a lot of guys that could project out pretty well. There are, I think, 2, maybe 3 guys at the top that I really, really like. And then from there, it's like guys that I think could be good. I have some questions. I actually like 4, I think, more than most people too. But I think there's a lot of guys here that I have some questions about.
Interesting. So I might be higher on this offensive line class than you are. I think there's, maybe around like 8 guys that I feel like at least solid about. And then, I mean, again, depends on how we're evaluating good as well, considering that. But let's just get into it. Let's start off with number 10, who I'm a little bit lower on than some others. Kenyan Green here. I think I've seen some people have as a bit of a higher pick. And again, we're doing all offensive linemen together, which I think is the more fun way to do it. Some people will separate tackles and then interior offensive linemen. But, Kenyan Green, there's interesting stuff with him, right? He played 4 different positions in 2021. He played both tackle positions and both guard positions. So, I mean, versatile, that certainly helps. And if he's going to be a second round pick, which is where I have him in my top 64 prospects rankings, he was 64. So that's kind of how I feel about him. Great athlete. He's young. He's only 21. So that stuff is cool. He has some technique issues, and quite frankly, he just had some bad games. Like, he was a guard in Arkansas, and he was not in Arkansas, against Arkansas, and was just, I mean, he was bad in that game. That was like, if you want to see the negatives, that's the negatives. He had some rough games. Now, if you're banking on the average game, I think he could be a solid guard, and so that's why I still have him at number 10. Still find him interesting, but just a little bit lower on my list than others.
Yeah, I have him 5th, and I agree with what you said. I think he might be one of the better run blockers in this class. Now, you could obviously come back to that and say, well, it's a passing league now. How much do you value that? I still value it a little bit. I think it's important. I think there's development that has to come in his pass blocking, because I think he struggles with that the most. But I think in terms of upside, he might have some of the highest upside in this class, though. Like, he's a very good athlete. Like you said, he could play. I mean, I think he played like 4 or 5 positions, honestly. Like, I think he could play almost anywhere. I think that's something I just always kind of like in offensive lineman is being able to move around and be versatile. So that's maybe why I bumped him up a little bit. But yeah, I have him at 5 because I think he's versatile. I think he's athletic, and I think there's a lot of upside with this guy. That's still a lot of projection based because he has to get a lot better in the pass blocking game.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thing. But I don't love projection based offensive linemen. That's one of those positions where the best way to evaluate who's going to be a good at the next level is how good are you now. That's just that's how the trend seems to go. Whereas it's different with like wide receivers. The best guys in college don't end up being the best guys in the NFL, and sometimes guys who weren't great in college end up being great in the NFL. Seems like for offensive linemen, the projection-based guys don't work out more than they work out, which is a little bit concerning for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there's a couple guys that can, sneak through the cracks. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see how he projects because, like I said, the athleticism is there for him to be really good. It just has to, he has to put in the work and develop.
Yeah. Let's move on to a guy who, I say I don't love projection-based guys, and I'm kind of moving on to a projection-based guy, but it's more of I feel like the projection is kind of almost like, so I'll say who it is. Abraham Lucas, out of Washington, who's a guy who I feel like the scheme could have utilized him a little bit better. I think he's a better pass blocker than run blocker, but I'd like to see him kind of more of an NFL-y offense. He has, I did notice not the best hands, not overly explosive. He is definitely a pass blocking guy. But I think that there's plenty to like about him. He has the frame, and he had solid production as well at Washington State, by the way, not Washington. But I think that there's just there are some slight issues on his tape. But like I said, I think there's a tier jump at 8. I like him. I think there's stuff to like about him.
Yeah, I think he's huge. He's huge, and that obviously helps. Very good numbers too. I mean, I was looking at it, over 3,000 snaps real quick. Only gave up 4 sacks and 6 QB hits. Now part of that is the offense too, because he played in a lot of quick passing offensive games, so that helped. But I do think that there's a role for him. He seems like a very good pass blocker. Like you said, I'm curious to how he looks on his. He looks slow and he plays slow, and he also, like you said, doesn't have the best hands. But when you're that size, you can make up for a lot of deficiencies, I feel like, in your game.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the perfect way to put it. Want to move on to number 8?
Yes.
All right. Number 8. Let's get a guy. I'm very excited to talk about this guy, Trevor Penning, out of Northern Iowa. I mean, what a unique player this guy is. I wrote nasty on his in my notes for him because that's just the best way to describe him. Kyle, this is the guy who watches Saw before games to get himself pumped up. That's the kind of guy we're dealing with here, and you see it on film. I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, the guy I took the notes, and I don't know what happened to it, but the amount of penalties that this guy took in college is just absurd. He's a good tackle. Like, he's very good tackle. He barely lost. He had a lot going for him, but in fact, if you're talking about guys who lost the least, he probably lost the least, but granted, that's part of competition he was going up against. But he's a very interesting player.
Yeah, I really like him too. I have him at number 6 on my list. He's, like you said, big guy. It seems like he just loves football too, right? It just seems like he loves to be out there and competing.
I think he loves hitting people.
That's true. I mean, he could probably, the longest yard scene where the guy's just smacking his head against the concrete wall. That could honestly be him just on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a massive human being and plays like a massive human being. He's not afraid of anybody. Obviously the concern is how does he translate to a much higher level of competition, A, and B, if he's going to commit a ton of penalties against a low level of competition, how does that translate to the next level? He can't commit that many holding penalties. I'm a little concerned about that, but there's a lot to like about him.
Yeah, I found the stat, Kyle. So in 12 games last year, he committed 16 penalties, 5 personal fouls. He's almost getting a personal foul every other game, this guy.
Gotta love it. No, I'm just kidding. There's some guys who are going to there's some teams who are going to look at that and say, we are not drafting this guy, though. But
there's some guys who are going to look at that and say, we are drafting him for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's things to like about him, but yeah, I mean, you can't shoot yourself in the foot with 15-yard penalties all the time. So
right. Yeah, I mean those are drive killers. It's just incredible. I also have he is very raw. He doesn't have great footwork or hands, but I think he'll figure it out. And again, he was great in Northern Iowa, so I like him. Very fascinating guy.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to someone who might be one of my guys. I'm higher on than most. Another guy who had production in the SEC, Darian Carter, Kentucky tackle, who he has another guy with good power, good hands. I do think that he can, block pretty much everybody except for Devontae Wyatt. That's the one guy who's got his number. Other than that, he did really good. I mean, he did not give up much pressure. His size and hands allow him to come back when he is initially beat because he isn't the most explosive. That is the biggest negative about his game and why he is a little bit lower. But there's a lot to like about him. And again, the level of competition was good and he performed well.
Yeah, I had him just off my list, but he is a guy that I think can be very good, and I think he translates to the next level. Like you said, he played against tough competition, excelled against tough competition, and he projects out really well. I think he might have to slide into guard. I don't know if he can play tackle at the next level, just given his size, but I still think he could be a pretty good guard at the next level too. So I do see him being a pretty good player, and probably developing into a starter as well.
Yeah, and I don't really care. Like, I think people overvalue tackle as opposed to guard in general. That's just kind of a philosophy of NFL. It seems like a good guard gets you as much value as a good tackle does, where it seems like a lot of people kind of view. So, like, I don't really care as much about if you're a guard or you're a tackle. If you're a good player, then I'm cool with it because I don't think the positional value actually matters as much as people do. Although the flip side is it's harder to get a good tackle than it is to get a good guard.
Yeah. Well, I do think the thing is too, now that we're seeing especially is, as more and more pass rushers are lining up inside,
hmm
having good guards that can pass block is almost just as important as tackles now.
Yeah, this is a good point as well. Let's keep talking about guards. Let's go to my favorite guard in this draft class, Zion Johnson here at number 6. Zion Johnson to me just feels like the ultimate. Like, yeah, he'll be a solid guard. There are some people who are really high on Johnson. I've heard some people say like he should be like a top 10 pick. I don't see that. I think that he has really good hands. He's his strength is solid. He's not incredibly athletic, I don't think, but didn't have as much production as some of these other guys, but I think Johnson will be solid. I think Johnson is sort of a late first rounder kind of guy. I'd love if Tampa Bay got him.
Yeah, I have him as my number 2 guard in my class, although I guess one's kind of a tackle guard.
Right,
swing.
yeah. He's my number 1 guy that I know will be a guard.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, yeah. So we'll talk about him obviously later. Johnson, I like a lot of his stuff. He just seems, I think he's the most ready player. Actually, no, I still view the top 3 guys as probably better. But as far as the rest of the guys on the list, I think he's the guy you could draft right now and stick into a starting lineup. He just doesn't make mistakes, it seems like a lot of times. He virtually committed no penalties, I think, in college. Hardly gave up any pressures. I just think he's a well-rounded player at that position. I think he's a straight plug-and-play kind of prospect. Even if, like, a guy – like, I think you're looking at the two sides, and it's like, okay, I could take Green and have the high upside play, or I can get Johnson and get a starter right now that's going to be pretty good. I think that's the two sides you look at this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and so that's why I would take Johnson because again, that tends to project better. Let's move on. Number 5 here, Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan. Really good. I mean, maybe you could argue he was a one-year wonder last year, but he was really good in 2021. He can move guys well. He can move to the second level very well. I think he could be a great guard, but I think he can play tackle too, and that's kind of a trend of a lot of these top 5 guys. He's a good athlete. He used to play tight end, so that's kind of an interesting thing there. The only real negatives of him, I don't think he's overly explosive. It's not horrible, but he's not overly explosive, and his arms are on the small side. To me, I've read studies on it. Doesn't seem like it matters arm length, but if you are someone, last year I talked about arm length. I kind of cared about that. Well, I think I've learned new information. Seems like that's not true, so I don't really care about that anymore. So arms are on the small side at 32 and 7/8, but I don't care.
Yeah, I have him at number. What did I have him at? I had him at 10. I think there's a lot to like here. I think he seems like he can develop into a pretty good tackle. I'm a little worried about the lack of reps. And I think the other thing too is he just randomly gets smoked off the line of scrimmage. And
Mhm.
maybe it's just from not playing the position a whole lot that it's like, okay, he'll get better at that. But it does seem like that, like occasionally he'll just get burnt and not be ready, it seems like. And I'm a little concerned about that. I think there's a little bit better tackles, but I think there's a lot to like here still.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because he's a great athlete, but he's not over. Like there's times when he goes up and he just like looks great, but then there's times when it doesn't work out. Another interesting thing about him, uh, you know, didn't play. Like you said, maybe not as much reps. Got a lot better year in and year out. So if you look at that kind of stuff and you like that stuff, those upward trends, he has an upward trend.
Yeah. No, I do think he has an upward trend. And I think,
Mhm.
but the thing, here's my question. Do you think he could start for a team this season?
Yeah, I think so. I think
You
he I
think
think
so?
he could be a solid starting tackle right away.
Okay. I think that's where I have a little bit of concern. I think it's going to take a year or two, but I do think he's someone who could develop into a pretty good starting player.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll see who's right and who's wrong about this. Let's go into the top four, which I think the top four is the most interesting. You said top three a couple times. Number four, Evan Neal here,
Hmm.
who I like Evan Neal. This is not a negative take with Evan Neal. I guess I'm a little bit lower on him than some others. So he's 6'8", 337. I mean, he looks skinny despite weighing over 330 pounds, which is just weird. He's a physical freak. He's had multiple good years in college. He can get up to the second level very well. He can move people in the running game. So there's a lot to like about Evan Neal. One thing I noticed about him is like he falls over a lot, which is kind of weird and almost made me wonder if like it's just he's too tall. He has a high center of gravity. He's another guy who I actually thought might be a guard, which is kind of a weird thing to think about a guy who's 6'8", but I could see that I could see that skill set kind of working. He didn't win as much as the other two tackles. Like that's just the reality of the situation. He played for Alabama, so that's going to factor in, right? But still, he didn't have as much production as some of these other guys.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a little hot. I do have him
Mhm.
at number one tackle. I think the upside is insane. I think not only is the upside insane, I think he could come in and be one of the best starters right now. I think he's nearly fully developed. I think he has some things to work on. So I didn't love him when he was rumored to be a potential number one pick. I don't think he's that level of a prospect, but I think he's a very good offensive tackle. Or, like you said, he could even swing into guard, honestly, which is insane for his size, like you were saying.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, he played at a high level of competition, excelled at a high level of competition, and the athleticism is there that I think he can become one of the best tackles in the game soon.
So you had him at number one?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, I think of all 40 guys, I'm like, you could have either one of them. Like, I like him a lot, so I'm not like that negative on him. But he lost sometimes. Like, he did lose sometimes. He was not a guy who would just go out there and I guess that's kind of what I view is what am I drafting here? I'm drafting a guy who will hopefully block an edge rusher as high percentage of snaps as possible. He did it not as high percentage of snaps as the other two tackles on this list. And again, he played for Alabama. He played in tough competition. But they're just little things I noticed, in this game. Hey, why do you keep falling down so much? Maybe take a ballet lesson or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there are some things, but I also think there's things that like I just project him to be insane at some point, and I think he's going to hit that level. Um, like I said, I think there's just so much upside to his game that I didn't view him as the number one pick, but I
Mhm.
don't see him falling out of the top 10 players either.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's an outside chance he could fall outside of top 10, but I think he's very good. And part of it comes down to philosophy, right? Do you want the
Yeah,
guy with upside or do you want the guy with production? I'm choosing production. You're choosing upside.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm. All right, number three. This is a guy who, like Tyler Linderbaum. The concern with Tyler Linderbaum, in my opinion, is that he's 10 pounds too light and he plays center. Like those are his two concerns. Like the fact that he plays center is the only reason he is not number one because it is not as viable as a position. He's, I think, as close to a can't miss prospect as you can get in this draft class, in my opinion. He gets to the second level well. He's good with double teams. He can block guys in pass protection one-on-one for a center. That's awesome. He had a ton of production in Iowa. I feel very good about it. Whoever drafts Tyler Linderbaum should feel very good about it.
Yeah, so I have him on my list too. I have him at let's see here. I have him at seventh.
Oh.
And I think part of it is the positional value I think matters. I think
Mm-hmm.
the center is going to dock him a little bit in my book because it's just you're not going to take a center that high in the
Mm-hmm.
draft. And I don't know. I think the size things matters a little bit more. I saw some times where some bigger guys were able to move him around, and I'm just curious: is he going to be a big enough player to play in the NFL? Like, if he goes against a 3-4 defense, how's he going to handle a nose tackle potentially? I think that's something he's going to struggle with at times, especially early in his career. I'm just a little bit worried with his size at the next level.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't really see it as an issue in college, so that's kind of maybe I'll take another look at that. But that's fair. It's a fair reason to dock him.
Yeah. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I still think he's the best center in this class, and I think he's going to project as the best center. I think he is going to be able to start right away. I'm just a little worried about the size. I think there are going to be some teams who might be able to bully him.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. So I have two O linemen left. It is the two that you're all thinking of, but which one is one and which one is two? Charles Cross here at
Yeah.
number two. I like Charles Cross. I think he's really good. He's a smart player. He recognizes stunts very well. Has really good hands. The hands you notice. I mean, the hands. I kind of compared him to like magnets at times, where he gets his hands like on the sort of and it like just stays there. Sometimes too much, and he'll get a holding penalty. So that's the other. That's the bad part. But really good hands, really strong. Again, a bit of a one-year wonder is kind of the other issue I have with him. He's someone who also doesn't have quite as much production as my number one guy, but he's not too far behind, and very good.
Yeah, I have him number 3.
Hmm.
He's a guy I think, he might be the second best athlete in this class behind Neal.
Hmm.
And he's a very good athlete. And like you said, the hands are top notch too. I think he translates really well to the next level. I think I think he's a plug and play starter for me as well. I think he's going to be taken in the first round pretty easily.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel that way about all these top four guys. Of like they're like right away they're going to help their team.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like, like I said, I think the top 4 guys all are going to be able to be day one starters. And then you could talk yourself into Linderbaum, like you said, starting
Hmm.
as well. So yeah, I mean, I think all those guys are going to be taken in the first, second round, top of the second round potentially. But yeah, I think he's a guy who, like you said, is potentially, a all pro player at the next level.
Yeah. All right. Number one, it is Akim Akwanu here. I like this guy. Again, I don't have him that much higher than Neal or Cross in terms of the tackles. I think he can play tackle. Like I know that there's been a lot of talk about him being a guard. Uh, he probably would be a better guard than tackle, but I think he can do both. I don't think that he's moving to guard because he can't play tackle. I think he might move to guard because he could be better at that. He has huge power. He's just a star in the running game, especially. He's been a good run blocker for 3 years. The kind of only became the pass blocker that he is last year. So maybe I don't know if that's a positive or negative, but that's something. And again, very violent guy. Someone who will definitely not hit you maybe during the whistle, maybe a little after the whistle as well. Ikwanu will. But again, great production, does not lose. I think can play guard or tackle, so has position versatility and probably the best, I think, complete offensive lineman in this draft class. Whereas Cross and Neal, you can argue about I think that he's on the same level, in my opinion, with them in terms of pass blocking, but I think Akwanu is much better as a run blocker, which is what gave him the edge over the other two.
Yeah, one of the most complete players in this class. Like you said, he's nasty. He will probably be in some fights in his NFL career.
Hmm.
And I think like you said, he projects as a day one starter. And I think the thing I like about him and why I put him at number 2 is he just seems like the kind of player who's going to be able to play potentially 4 positions. I could see him playing all 4 positions across the line besides center. I think he just
Hmm.
projects out to that. And I think he's just tough as nails. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to really like about his game.
That'd be wild if you just played him at center. That would be an interesting move.
That's where he ends up. Yeah, that'd be very interesting.
Uh-huh. Yeah, probably not. But no, very fascinating player. Where did you say he ended up on your list?
2. I had Neal
Two.
1, uh, Ekwanu 2, Cross 3, and
Gotcha.
Zion Johnson 4.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. I think with those three tackles, they're all relatively interchangeable for me. Some of it comes down to, do you run the ball more? Do you throw the ball more as well? So interesting stuff. Any other offensive linemen you want to talk about?
Yeah, so my 8 and 9 were not in your list. At 9, I had Jamari Salyer. I say it wrong all the time. He's
Uh-huh.
another guy. He played basically every position on the line. I like positional versatility for my offensive lineman, and I think he's a very good pass blocker too. I think he translates really well to the next level. And then at number 8, this is kind of one of those projection-based players who we said we're kind of on the fence about sometimes. It's Nicholas Petit Frere from Ohio State. This guy can't pass block at all. I mean, he might be one of the worst pass blocking prospects in the draft, but
Uh-huh.
he's one of the best athletes, has great hands, and is a really good run blocker. And I still think there's room to develop in his pass blocking game, and he gets better.
Interesting. Yeah. Just looked him up. 120th on PFF's rankings for this. So hey, top 4 pick.
There you go.
Yeah, top 4 as in routes. But yeah, let's. Okay, so we're 3 down, 1 to go. I think the most exciting one to talk about, the receivers. There's so many
Yeah.
good receivers, and this seems to be a trend year after year now. You can get good receivers in rounds 3, which is kind of, I'm a believer now, and you should never let a draft go by where you don't take a receiver or safety in rounds on day 2. On day 2, you should at least get 1 receiver or 1 safety. That's a general rule.
Yeah, so we're only going to do 10. I feel like you said, you could go down this list. You could probably make 20 guys that I could realistically see getting drafted. And even
Uh-huh.
like undrafted guys. Like I love Slade Bolden. I love Slade Bolden. He's not on my list. He probably
Mhm.
wouldn't crack the top 20 on my list, but I would really like him at the next level too. I think there's a lot of guys who translate. So I want to pitch it to you real quick. Get your thoughts on this. So last year we did this. We went through all these players too. I think so. You had Kadarius Toney 1, and you
Mhm.
had some concerns about Jamar Chase, and a lot of it had to do with speed at the next level.
Uh-huh. And route
Have
running.
in route running. So have you
Mhm.
changed any of your stuff as far as wide receiver evaluation? Now, I think Tony is going to be a good receiver in the NFL. He dealt with some
Mhm.
injuries. That Giants situation sucked. He didn't have a quarterback the second half of the season. I think all that
Mhm.
matters. But Chase obviously exceeded your expectations from day
Yeah.
one.
Mhm.
So have you changed anything looking at that for the next level?
Yeah, a little. It's a good question, and it's always interesting with that stuff of like, was it the right process or was it the wrong process? Because it clearly was the wrong result having Jamar Chase as I had him as number 3. I had Waddle 2 as well. I think going back to what I thought about Jamar Chase last year, my concerns about him were like, okay, all he does is just blow by everybody. Like in the NFL level, corners are going to be able to keep up with you. You're going to have to figure out other ways to win. And then he just like blew by everyone at the NFL level. So I was like, oh, okay, I
Yeah.
guess you're just good enough to do that. So I guess that's kind of maybe my one thing is like, if you're awesome at something, then like, okay, you're awesome at something. Like maybe don't overthink that too much would be one thing that I would say.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think there's a lot of debate to this class.
Hmm.
I think I have some hot takes on here. I'm sure you're also
Good.
going to have some hot takes.
You better believe
Uh,
it.
so let's go back and forth with this.
Yeah, yeah. That's just because I had some hot takes last year didn't work out. Hey, in the past I've done better, right? I still think about
Yeah,
like Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. I was big fans of both of those guys. So
you hit
hopefully,
some, you miss some.
yeah, exactly. No one knows anything, right? But we try our best. Let's go here to. I've lost my notes, so this is not great. Where are my notes? Don't know what's happening. Okay, I got it. We're good. We're back. Don't worry about it. We mailed it. Number 10, Khalil Shakir here. He's my number 10 guy. And quite frankly, like these guys, I would think it's crazy at the end of the first round to get someone like him. Like that's kind of where we're at. I think really I'd probably say I don't know if the top 8 guys there might be the first rounders. This might be a second rounder type guy, but can make some great one-handed catches. He's the Boise State receiver. One-handed catches are good. It breaks a lot of tackles. I also wrote in my notes blue jerseys are cool, which is true. I guess that's something I noticed when I was watching film is that the jerseys that they wear are cool. His physical tools aren't outstanding. He's 6 feet tall, 196 pounds, kind of becoming more of a trend for guys to be under 200 pounds than over 200 pounds. Ran a 4.43. So it's like, it's not bad. It's just like, not like, you're not going to go crazy over it. And concentration drops were certainly a thing with Shakir. He is probably mostly a slot guy as well, but I think he could be good at it. So I like him here. He makes my top 10 list at number 10.
Yeah, I had him. I had him just off my list a little bit because I think I just value outside receivers more. I think you could just find
Mm-hmm.
slot receivers throughout the draft. So I agree with a lot of the stuff you said. I think he's a good route runner. I think he's going to be a good slot receiver at the next level. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to really like here. I think there's just some guys with some higher upside. I think I'm rating a little higher than him, but I do think he's going to be a mid-round good player too. I think he's going to be a middle-round player and be very good.
Yeah, and listen, I don't hate the idea of drafting for upside with wide receivers because it is such a hard position to evaluate. I'm not the only person who misses with wide receivers. Everyone does. That's one of the most consistently drafted poorly positions in the NFL. That and quarterback are the two most difficult to evaluate. So I think that makes sense, and I totally get the logic behind it. Let's go to a guy who I think is one of those, projection-based guys who I could see when it's all said and done. I could see this number 9 guy being number 1 a year from now. I don't think it's crazy. Give me Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. I do get there's DK Metcalf comparisons all over with Watson, and I get it. 6'4", like Metcalf, ran a 4.36. He's explosive, and he's an incredible athlete. The issue is he's just a complete projection. I mean, he's not much of a route runner. He isn't much of a contested catch guy. It's always weird with these North Dakota State guys in general, just because there's no competition, and these guys it's like if Alabama was playing in in the Division II. It's like, how do you know what's going on? Like this, these guys just dominate year after year. There were some drop issues, and I didn't think he won on the outside consistently. But again, like Metcalf, it's like, okay, give me this guy who looks like he was built in a lab to play football, and we'll teach him how to play football at the NFL level.
Yep, I completely agree. I have him number 6 on my list. I think there's just guys who aren't this size and stature with this speed very often, right? Like you just look at it and say, okay, I see at very least he's going to be a good deep threat. I think he's going to be very good at the next level at that. I think there are some things. There's a lot of development curve with him, but at the same time, like he's 6'5" and runs a 4.3. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
right.
There's just so much to like there. I'm just so high on him. I think he can, like you said, I think there's a ton of upside here. I see the Metcalf comparisons I really like. At the next level, I think he can be very good, and I'm really excited to see him project out.
Right. The obvious concern, we're drafting him to be somebody he isn't currently.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, I agree with you. Let's move on. Number 8. Here's a guy who is, the ceiling is not as high as Watson, but the floor is significantly higher. And it's probably just going to be someone who I feel confident, Skye Moore here at number 8. Seems like the kind of guy where, his potential isn't as high as these other guys, but he's like sort of a fringe first rounder. And I feel very confident he will be like a top 32 player in this draft when it's all said and done, even if he's not someone who will be a top 5 player. Because, runs a great curl route, that's for sure. Runs a curl route, runs a slant route. He can do that. Great from the slot. He's explosive. He is shifty. He doesn't win on the outside consistently. He will get some wins on the outside. And he's definitely a little bit small at 5'10", 195. Ran a 4.4, but again, he just wins. And I think he'll be a good slot receiver for several years.
Yeah. He's someone I had number 9 on my list. Another guy I like too. And like you said, there is a path to where he translates to the NFL level. I mean, I think he just does. He's not going to be a burner. He's not going to be a terrific route runner, I think. Although I do think he runs some routes pretty well. And like you said, he's just so shifty. He's a guy who makes a lot of people miss. I really like him. I think he translates to the next level and it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's kind of like I feel like him as a prospect, kind of like a light Kadarius Toney.
Yeah. I could see it. I don't think he has the speed of Toney, but he has a lot of the other similarities.
Yeah, exactly. That's what sort of why I say sort of like a light Toney, because not quite as good, but like similar kind of still stylistically. Let's move on. Number 7, maybe a bit of a hot take here. Someone who I feel like is getting slept on a bit. This is definitely lower than consensus boards have. Give me John Michie out of Alabama. Now, he's definitely someone who's small, at 5'11", 187, and he's also coming off an ACL injury. So those are the concerns, but if I can see DK Metcalf vibes with Christian Watson, I can see some Devonta Smith vibes with John Michie. Coming out of Alabama, really good footwork, a good route runner, and is very shifty. And that's what I like about him, is he just, can move very well. I always seem to fall in love with Alabama wide receivers. Maybe some foreshadowing for later. But John Michie, I think, is a massively slept on guy, and someone who, if you can get him around 2 or 3, I think that could be a steal.
Yeah, I have him 10th on my list, and I like a lot of his stuff. The injury thing is obviously the one thing where it's like, okay, how does that affect him? Is he going to be ready to play year 1? That being said, I'm not overly concerned with, like if you have to wait a year, I still think he's worth a pick. I think he's going to be good.
Uh-huh.
And I think he's got good speed too. I think he does a lot of things well. He's the kind of guy I looked at as potentially like a Tony-like player.
Mhm.
And
I
I
see
think
that as well.
yeah, I think he's just, with the size, the stature, the speed, the shiftiness, I think he translates well to the next level. I think he's a guy who can line up inside and outside. There's a lot
Mhm.
to like with Michie, I think. I think he's someone that I like at the next level.
Doesn't it just seem like he's someone who could like I feel like, with Christian Watson, he's someone who I feel like years from now we could be sitting here and I'd be saying, why did I have him number 9? It was all right there. I feel like you could be saying something similar with Michi.
I think that too, and he's also someone who could say, "Why did we even think this guy was going to be good? Because he's just going to get blown off the line of scrimmage because
Right.
he's too
Hmm.
small." But at the
Yeah.
same time, like I still think that the league is going smaller. The trend is smaller, and I think it's going to work for him at the next level. We saw Smith handle that physicality just fine. I think
Hmm.
he's someone who can also handle it.
Yeah. Let's move on to another guy who is actually weighed in at the exact same weight at 187. Give me Ohio State wide receiver Chris Olave here at number 6. Maybe a little lower than some other people have him. He's kind of an interesting player, right? Because he's been good for 3 years at Ohio State. It's kind of just been like the same like quality for all 3 years. Like he hasn't got
Yeah.
improved or gotten worse in any of these years. He is quick off the line. That's something you definitely notice, and his speed helps set things up. Here's kind of my issue with Olave. He's not much of a blocker, but I don't care about that as much. One of the kind of things that I feel I noticed, and noticed this with him and with another guy that we'll get to in just a second. It seems like a lot of his wins really just came from his speed or what his speed set up. Didn't think he was as shifty or as good of a route runner as the other top 5 guys.
Interesting. So I have him at what did I have him at the end? I had him at number 3.
Okay.
I think he's one of the better route runners in this class. I think he's really polished. I think he sets himself up to get open deep a lot. And I think the one concern is he doesn't have a ton of yards after the catch. He doesn't break a ton of tackles. But that being said, if you're running past everybody, you don't need to break a tackle. He's got speed for days and he gets open all the time. And those are two things I just love. I have him at number 3 for that. And I think he's going to be terrific at the next level.
Yeah, interesting. So I mean, it's kind of one of those weird things where we both go watch the film and just feel differently about the exact same trade. I don't think he's a very good route runner, and you think he's a great route runner. So maybe I'll go back and check. Nothing we can do about it, right? Because there's no
Yeah.
stats for route running. You have to just basically say, okay, no way to go from here in the conversation. But I definitely think, would you agree that he's not as shifty as some of these other guys? You brought up not being able to make some guys miss.
Yeah, that's the thing. So that's probably the one thing is, like I said, he doesn't break tackles and he doesn't, like you said, doesn't make guys miss, but he makes guys miss by running past them, basically. And that's something I
Hmm.
think is really
But
important.
will that work again? The
Yeah,
question: will it work at the NFL level?
that is a tough question. I still
Hmm.
think that there's things to like, and I think it's also just because he works his way open. I think in routes that it helps him. That he doesn't necessarily have to make guys miss when he has the ball in his hand. I do think the one thing is like he's not someone you're gonna draft to run the short routes. I think are something that he struggles with. Like I don't know if he's gonna be able to run a ton of slants, drag routes, those sort of patterns. But as far as I'm trying to think of where is like a Tennessee offense where he can run a bunch of crossing routes and just beat guys across the field, get open deep. I think that sort of offensive setup is something he might excel at.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been watching so much college football. You see Tennessee, I'm like, I'm thinking about the college, not the
Yeah.
Titans. Yeah, yeah. No, that's very very fascinating. He is someone who, again, I like him. Number 6. If the Buccaneers drafted him for some reason, I'd be excited, although confused. But I'm just saying, like, if my favorite team drafted him, I'd be excited because there is stuff to like, and who knows with wide receivers. Let's go on to another guy who I'm lower on than most. This might be a hot take. I'm interested in seeing where you have him. Garrett Wilson, only number 5. He is number 1 on some other boards. There's stuff I like about Garrett Wilson. In fact, again, he's kind of another one of those guys who's sort of a jack of all trades type of guy. The question is he a master of none? So very similar to Chris Olave stylistically, right? Same height, similar weight. 40 time was almost identical. So there's a lot of similarities between Wilson and Olave. Here's my concern with Garrett Wilson is that I just feel like a lot of his wins came from. Again, I kind of talked about this with Olave, but I thought it was really true with Wilson. A lot of his wins came from speed. So he'd either blow by someone, or
Yeah.
then someone would then play off, and then he'd just run a curl route. And it's like, okay, well, will that work at the NFL level? And again, this could be, you brought up the Jamar Chase thing, and maybe I'm making the same mistake with him as I'm making with Chase. But I feel like the process of, if I don't notice a work at the NFL level, I don't want to spend a top 10 pick on you, is the correct process, even if it will sometimes mean that you miss out on a guy who can consistently blow by corners on the outside. So there's that's the potential, and that's cool. And there's stuff he does really well. I do think when he tries to run routes, he can be very good at it. I just wish he would try more. Really good first step. He adjusted the ball very well and definitely fast. But those are just like some slight concerns that knock him down a little bit in a loaded wide receiving room.
Okay, so yeah, another interesting one for us. I also have Garrett Wilson at 5. Um,
Okay, there you go.
so here's my concerns. Number one, I think he's a lot worse of a route runner than Chris Olave. Personally, I think he's a lot worse. But they, like you said, similar stature and build. I just think Olave is better at getting himself open. And then the second thing, I think that my biggest concern with Wilson, um, is this guy like just gonna get destroyed by every press coverage team? Like if he has good games, so Chase beats press coverage because he has this insane catch radius and just wins every 50-50.
Right.
What's this guy's solution if he's just going to get bullied at the line of scrimmage? He can't run past the press coverage necessarily. I mean, he'll try, but I think that's something I'm really concerned about him at the next level is that, even if he starts to have a good game, I think teams are just going to press him, and I think it's going to become a problem. Until he starts to figure that out, I have him a little bit lower. That's why I have him at 5th.
It's interesting because I feel like he's more well suited to do that than Olave is, because I think he has a good first step at least. And the other thing he can do that I talked about a little bit briefly is he can read the ball very well. So it's like it's not about contested catches necessarily, but also about like seeing the ball and knowing where you have to get into that spot. I thought he did that very well. And again, I liked his first step better than Olave. For me, Olave, I thought his route running was pretty much just run to the spot. So again, we disagree on that, and that's fine. But we just we saw different things. But I feel like Wilson, at least I like his ability. Why I put him ahead of Olave by one spot is because I feel like he's a little bit better suited to fix that issue.
It's potential. I mean, we'll have to see how he translates. But like I said, I think he's a little smaller than Olave too, and I think that adds to it. But yeah, I mean, I have some concerns with that stuff at the next level. And I think, as far as who we're going to pick as our number one wide receiver in this class, there's a few guys in this class I like a lot more than him, and I feel are more sure things than what Wilson does at the next level.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly how I felt. It's too loaded of a class to go after Garrett Wilson. I have him as a late first rounder because of those issues.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to number 4. Got a couple hot takes here, Kyle. Number 4, this is the guy who started to get some love as of late. George Pickens out of Georgia, I think, is someone who's very fascinating. Now, he's coming off of a torn ACL, and also doesn't get quite as much separation as you would like, but he is 6'3", so that's kind of a factor in there. You could also argue, again, I'm going to start off with the negatives. A little bit skinny. He was really good in 2019, but kind of took a step back in 2020 and barely played in 2021. But he did still show flashes in those years. One last issue, some character concerns. He's been suspended for half a game for getting into a fight. He got flagged for spraying water on an opposing player, which is the funny thing there. But, I just think he's really shifty. He understands leverage really well. He has good hands, great at contested catches, and good instincts. Fast for his height at 6'3". So I just think that there's, again, it's a bit of a projection pick, but I also think that there is still good stuff on tape for me that I really like George Pickens.
Okay, so this is I mean, so I've watched a lot of Pickens, and I guess here's the thing. I think these contested catch, I have them off my board.
Gotcha.
And first of all, the character concerns, I'm a little more concerned with the character concerns, I think, than you are.
Okay.
I think these contested catch guys are the toughest to evaluate. Like we say wide receiver is a tough position to evaluate. I think these guys who go up and make contested catches are the toughest receiver skill set to evaluate. And we're going to talk about this too later in this thing with, I think, number 1 potentially. There's a fine line for these guys who are big physical receivers who make these catches in traffic. I think there's a fine line between DeAndre Hopkins and turning into a N'Keal Harry type who just doesn't make these catches. And to me, Pickens feels more N'Keal Harry type, where he's big, he's going to use his body really well, but when he's playing against these bigger corners at the NFL level, how does he make those catches? I'm not sure if he can do that, or if he's going to be as good as like the the DeAndre Hopkins type, who's, the best at that, obviously, or, Jamar Chase type. So I'm a little concerned about that at the next level. And I think that's something that's going to be tough for him to overcome. But there is a ton of upside here, and I get it. That's why I have him off my board.
Yeah. I get those concerns. I'm just not as concerned. I don't think it's as big of a deal with him as you do. I don't think that I think he gets enough separation for me that I'm not as concerned about it. But again, when a guy I have him, his positives is great at contested catches and his negatives doesn't get separation as much as you'd like, that is a red flag right off the bat.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's just so hard to be good at that consistently, especially when you're playing the best of the best when it comes to NFL cornerbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And while, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit because I just like the kid who's not number one for me so much, I think that they have similar skill traits. I just think that there's a fine line between being really good at it and potentially being one of the best receivers in football and being just okay at it and struggling. And then you're a guy who struggles to get open and make catches.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think what's funny is everything you're saying right now is kind of what I said about Jamar Chase last year. And I think it was fair to bring that up last year, just like it's fair to bring it up about Pickens this year of part of my issue with Jamar Chase, he wins so much contested catches. This is the concern, guys. Are we sure he's going to do this at the NFL level? And he did, but it doesn't always work out that way. And you're right.
Yeah.
N'Keal Harry is the flip side of that coin, which is the concern. I think he's shifty enough and has good enough instincts and is a good enough route runner that I'm not as concerned about it. But I think it's a fair thing to bring up.
Yeah. So he's definitely, there's a couple of these guys I think is really tough to evaluate. And this skill set, I think, is just incredibly tough. But I'm curious to see how he works out. I think he's someone who can make me look foolish because, like I said, he's not in my top 10.
Yeah, and he's certainly someone who can make me look foolish as well. It'll be interesting to see how this works. And again, there's, with all these guys, our list should look different because it's hard to evaluate this stuff. If all of our lists look the same, then you're just copying someone else's list because it's difficult and, we all have different opinions and different things we value.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Number 3, one more hot take. Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati at number 3. I fell in love with this guy watching him. I mean, again, another guy who's great at contested catches. But I mean, he reminded me of Cooper Kupp at times watching his tape. I mean, he doesn't cut as smoothly as others. That's kind of one thing, but his footwork isn't as spectacular. I also wrote in my negatives, he jumps sometimes when he doesn't have to. That's a weird thing that the ball will be coming right towards his head and he still jumps to make the catch. But, good hands. He can beat press. He can win on the outside consistently. He might actually have the best highlights from any wide receiver in this draft class. His highlights are fantastic. When he wins, it looks awesome. He doesn't win it quite as much as the top 2 guys, which is why he's, number 3. But I think he's really good. And I think there's a lot to like about Pierce.
Yeah, so I have him at number 8. And like you said, he's an insane athlete, and I think he can translate to the next level. And the upside on him is insane. Now, I guess the biggest question I have for him, the number one thing is, so you said before, and I agree to a certain extent that production for wide receivers doesn't necessarily matter. But at the same time, you can't blame necessarily having a bad quarterback in college because his quarterback's probably going to go in the first 2 rounds,
Yeah.
So it's so why wasn't he better? I think that's the thing I have questions about. That being said, he's good on the outside. He makes a ton of contested catches, like you said, and I really liked him moving into the slot a little bit more his last season as well. I think he translates really well to the next level. I'm just pushing back a little bit because you have him at number 3.
No,
I
sure,
still have him. Yeah, I mean, I have him number 8, so I really like him too. And I really like him at the next level, I think.
Yeah, no, it's the unfortunate scenario. I've been in the other spot too, where there's a player I like and then you fall in love with, and then I have to give the negative thoughts, even though I came on to the podcast thinking I was going to talk him up. No, with Pierce, I think that that is fair. The production thing does come into play. I thought he got open at times and didn't get the ball. I thought that was a very real thing. But I think that's a fair criticism. And if that's going to cause him to fall in your rankings, I'm not going to fight back on it.
Yeah. So there's a ton of upside to him, though. I think he could be, the steal of the draft potentially. And as far, there's not a lot of lot of guys in this draft, I think, with physical traits that match him, that I think it's going to be really interesting to see, where he's taken and how he's used at the next level.
Yeah. And, One Nation on the Ground bring up Cincinnati ran the ball a ton and used the tight end quite a bit. And I did feel like, there were times when he was getting open and Desmond Ridder wasn't throwing to him. Again, Desmond Ridder, good quarterback. I think slightly imperfect. There's some
Yeah,
small issues on his tape.
that's fair. So,
Yeah.
and I don't think either one of us were as high in him as like some of the other projections are. So,
Right. But yeah, again, very interesting stuff with Alec Pierce. Let's talk about the top two here. So I'm going to go with your number one guy, who was my number one guy for, I'm assuming this is the number one guy, given how you talked earlier, Drake London here
yeah.
at number two. There's one issue with Drake London, I guess technically two issues of him, and then there's so much good. So let's talk about the good first. His route running is probably the best in this draft class. His route running is fantastic. He can get open. He understands leverage incredibly well, which allows him to get open. There's some really fun plays on tape. He's 6'4", so he can go up, and he's kind of like there's Mike Evans comparisons, and I think those comparisons are fair because not only is he a contested catch guy like Evans was, but he's a good route runner and can get separation despite his size. Because the taller you are, typically the less separation you get. But he's tall and can still get separation with his ability to use footwork. I'm not saying he's Mike Evans level, but he's good at it. That's what you like about him, and that's what you get excited about him. The two issues, obviously, the lighter one coming off an injury, that's not as big of a deal to me. The biggest issue is I just worry if he has the speed to win on the outside consistently. So that's why he's number two.
Yeah, the speed thing I think is a concern, but I think, like you said, the route running I think makes up for the lack of speed because you can create separation that way if you don't have elite speed. I think this is a potentially DeAndre Hopkins type player. I think I have him in my top. I haven't done a full list, but I think right now I'd have him in the top 6 of my prospects. I think this guy is that kind of level of receiver. I think he has great route running, like you said. He gets open a lot, and he's got this catch radius, which is probably second to none, coming from a basketball background into the NFL. I love also that when he was younger, he played in the slot, so I think there's some a little more versatility to his game. But I just look at this guy and said, this guy's going to catch everything, and I think it's hard to project. Like I said, contested catches players. This guy just seems like he's going to be great at contested catches for his career. I am by far number one. I mean, I don't want to say by far number one because I really love number 2 for me too. But he's a guy that I think at the next level is going to be very good.
Yeah, so he was my 17th ranked prospect overall. My number 1 receiver was 10th ranked. So yeah, I think I had him at number 1 and said, okay, done with wide receiver talk. Cool, got my list. I'm good. And just a week ago when I finished that, and I think I was just listening to a podcast or something, and someone brought up it was a simple point of just can you really be the number 1 wide receiver in a draft class if if your speed is a clear issue and you're going to be one of the slower receivers in the NFL? And I was like, yeah, probably not. Yeah, there's enough risk factor there, especially with how much I like number 1. I docked him down a little bit for that.
That's fair. I get it, but we've also seen plenty of guys without elite speed when you're looking at Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins, those kind of guys that aren't amazing burners, and they just translate to the NFL because they got insane catchability and they get open. I view him as that level of a prospect, and that's why I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I would say Evans does seem a lot faster than Drake London. We don't know London's 40 time, but Evans was a 4.5 guy at 6'5". That works. I would suspect Drake London's probably around mid 4.6 is kind of what it looks like on film.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to see. I don't know. It'll be interesting, but yeah, I mean, I love this kid. I think he's going to be awesome. He feels can't miss to me almost.
Okay, he feels high ceiling. There is one small concern, and there's no concerns. I guess there's one small concern with number 1 as well. But Jameson Williams, his concern is again the injury, and you could argue kind of a 1-year wonder once he transferred to Alabama last year. So maybe that's kind of the other concerns. And even his route running a bit unpolished, but was very good at times. He's just so explosive and shifty. And he just turned 21, and take him number 1, or not number 1 overall, but take him with the first receiver.
Yeah, I love his too. I think yeah, I mean, I think he's insane. I think he's incredible. I want to put he might be my favorite player in the draft. I think London translates a little better, but I think I'm going to enjoy watching Jameson Williams a lot. I hope he does. I hope Kansas City doesn't package their picks to get him. That's what I hope.
You hope they don't?
Yes, I don't want to see Kansas City get him after.
What? That'd be incredible.
I don't care. This is the fan in me not wanting to see this
I
because he's going to be
see.
so good in that offense. Like
Yeah.
he's gonna be a Pro Bowler in that offense initially. Like
Here's one I heard that I think is super exciting. What about the Chargers? Like there's an outside
yeah,
chance that happens. That would be incredible.
that'd be a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Um, the speed though, the catchability. I mean, he is insane. I mean, there's just so much to love about his game. I guess the one thing is he's a little small. He's only 180 pounds from what I
Uh-huh.
saw.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're that fast and that shifty, does it matter?
Right. Yeah, exactly. We just saw, and especially like, I think Devonta Smith is going to get a lot of skinny guys drafted higher this year, with like him being like clear exception of like not only is he skinny, but like he's below like the threshold of what we expect from a wide receiver, and he still had no issue. Now I think people are going to say, okay, thank you Philadelphia, you chose that guy, you took that risk, and it worked out for you. Now we feel comfortable drafting a Jameson Williams.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have a lot of I'm a big fan of his. I hope he's ready to go by the beginning of the season. I think he's going to do a lot of good stuff at the next level.
Yeah. All right. So that's our list. We have some honorable mentions. There's definitely going to be a lot. One person, I see people in the chat saying, you guys are sleeping on Burks. Bad. Nicholas Gill saying, wow, my top wide receiver, Traylon Burks, didn't even make your top 10. Interesting. I'm just not as high on Traylon Burks, Kyle, as other people are. I guess to me, my thing about him is like when you talk about separation, he did not get much separation in college. I mean, he was very much a contested catch guy through and through. He's big. He is fast for his size, but like that was my biggest concern of him.
Yeah, and he has some drop issues, I think, too. So I have him at number 7 on my board. So I think that there's potentially still really good. I think that there's a lot of concerns, and he's not very fast. He's not very fast for a guy who's
Mhm.
kind of viewed as a deep threat. And it's just like I look at that and say, okay, how's he going to get open deep if he can't run past people? Like that just seems like a weird thing to project out. Like you said, he is a contested catch guy, but I do think he's had some drop issues. I think he's going to have some struggles, but I think he's also a really good catcher too. So I think he could have some good stuff. I do have him at 7. There are some concerns for me.
Yeah, and I just worry how his skill set will translate to the NFL. He's not that shifty either, so that's another like thing. It's like he doesn't like move particularly well, but he does find a way to win, and that's kind of the flip side of the contested catch argument, right? Is it's just a risk. It's not this won't work at the NFL level. It's I don't know if this will work at the NFL level, so let me draft a guy who I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I do have to push back on one of your guys, though. You don't have on your
Okay,
list. I have a number 4 on mine. This is along with Williams. I think this might actually be my number 1 favorite receiver to watch.
okay,
Uh, Jahan Dotson,
mm-hmm.
number
Yeah,
4 on my list. I think he to me is the number 1 route runner in this class. I think he can translate slot outside. I think he's an incredible catch. I think he's one of the best catchers in the class too. I think he's a good route runner. He's got decent speed, but not great speed. Obviously, I think that's one of the things that's limiting him. But I love everything about his game besides that, and I think he's going to be really good at the next level. I have him at number 4, and I have him as a fringe first rounder. He's not in your
wow.
top 10, so I gotta push back on that one.
Sure. Yeah. No, he's someone who a lot of people have higher than I do. I just wasn't that impressed with him. I thought that so I wrote in my notes and pulled it up. No big weaknesses or strengths with him. So it's like I didn't think that he was. I don't have like any glaring holes in his game, and so that's probably why you're a big fan of him. Like I thought that uh, well, So one thing is he's not very big, 5'11", 180. He doesn't really play like that though, so that's probably why it's a little bit higher. But again, at the NFL level, will it matter? I didn't think he cut incredibly well. I thought a lot of his wins kind of came from just finding soft spots in zones, similar to how I viewed Olave, which is like kind of getting to the soft spot in the zone and staying there, which, there's value in that. And he did make my honorable mentions, but like, is there as much value? Is he someone who's going to be a game changer? I didn't see it.
He projects out as at least my number 1 slot guy. I could see him go full-time slot when he hits the NFL. But I do think he's good on the outside too, which is why I like him so much. But yeah, I mean, if he's put in the slot for his entire career, I think he becomes the best slot receiver in the NFL potentially, or
Wow.
at least at Hunter Renfrow level potentially. But I just love so much about his game, and I enjoy watching him play. I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're not counting Cooper Kupp as a slot receiver in this scenario. Your favorite receiver in football, or maybe you are. Maybe you're not high on Dotson.
No, I don't have him. I would consider Cut more outside, but he obviously can play the slot too. I do see Dotson as one of those guys that can play inside and out, but with his size, I think he's going to be more forced inside, and I just think he's going to be really good at that spot.
Yeah, listen, I didn't see it with him, but like I'll say with every receiver, who knows? This is just such a projection. It's such a guessing game. It's, if there's 3 cups, find which one has the little ball under it, because it's quite the guessing game at times. But I mean, I didn't hate him. I liked him. I think there's interesting stuff, but to me, I have him as like a 3rd rounder.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I mean, this is easily the most controversial position, I'd say. I think everyone, there's going to be some David Bell stands out there who like David Bell. Justin Ross obviously had some tough things his last year in college and all that.
I thought he was solid. Yeah, the Clemson guy.
You can go up and down the list. I mean, you can, like I said, I love Slay Bolden, but Slay Bolden's probably going to get taken in the 7th round. I think he's a guy who could be good at the next level as that slot player. So, I mean, there's guys up and down this draft that I love.
Yeah, even the Memphis guy, Calvin Austin. I'm not sure if he can ride every roller coaster at Disney World, but I mean, he's someone who can move really well.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting draft. I think, like I said, I think I could go through this list and maybe pick 30 receivers that I like.
Yeah, it's going to be funny when there's like 10 Pro Bowlers from this draft class and we don't name any of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's just how it works.
So lesson learned, just draft receivers in round 3. Just make sure you do that. Every round, draft a safety or receiver in rounds 2 or 3.
It's definitely not a position you want to lack depth in 2022, right? I mean,
right.
we saw it with your stupid team last year. It's like, you had the Antonio Brown thing, and then you're basically stuck with Mike Evans doing everything. And you've drafted receivers too. Some of them just, Tyler Johnson didn't get better last year, that kind of thing. But
also late, Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson, 5th round and 6th round picks. Even Jalen Dardine was a 4th rounder. So maybe spend a 2nd or 3rd. That's the money spot.
Yeah, I would say, there are some teams that I think have some holes, but there's no reason to not take a receiver.
Yeah. Which receiver do you think that the Patriots take in round 1 that doesn't work out? I'm thinking Treylon Burks. I think that's how it works.
It could be, honestly. If they stick with the white receiver thing, Alec Pierce might be the guy.
Yeah, I could see that. That checks out. That makes some sense. Yeah.
And
that
then
could work.
Slay Bolden later, obviously, like I said.
Right.
So, I mean,
don't get an undrafted guy that works out, but
they're not taking a receiver in the 1st round, though. By the way, they're not.
You don't think so?
No.
Is it ever going corner?
I mean, my dream scenario would be Nakobe Dean, but he seems too fun for the Patriots.
Right.
So it's probably going to be, I would say it's corner or tackle.
Yeah. Oh, well, that'll be interesting. Well, I guess that's a little preview for Kyle a week from today, our 3rd annual mock draft, always the most hated on show every year, which is a very fun. I'm looking forward to that. I don't know how we're going to do it, though, because our teams both, I forget if it's even or odds, but our teams are both the same. Usually we do one does even, one does odds, but our teams are both the same on the same list this time. Usually it worked out that they kind of were on different sides.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out. I'm sure we can flip a coin or something for the first pick. We'll figure it out.
Or maybe it's like one of us will pick back to back at a certain point to make that work.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. Well, if you have to take the
we have a week
to
figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it should be good stuff. I'll never forget the first mock draft we did. I think everyone was hating on you because you picked J.K. Dobbins to the Ravens, and I said I had him projected to the same spot, and everyone said that was stupid. And then the Ravens took J.K. Dobbins. And that's the best thing ever.
Yeah, no, it's always great. I feel like it's the weirdest thing where I feel like consistently I give a ton of bad takes because I'm talking about over 100 prospects, right? I'm going to make some misses. So I consistently have these bad takes, and the ones that always get the most criticism for are like the ones that end up like actually like making sense.
Yeah.
And then I'll have these dumb takes like over here, and everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, that made sense. Good point, Jackson."
Yeah. So
no one knows anything.
Maybe not Kellen Mond as much, but some of the other ones.
But yeah, that one maybe not my best one, Kyle. Hey, quarterbacks are hard too.
Yeah, exactly. So
still time for Kellen Mond.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to it. I hope everyone tunes in for that next week.
Yeah, that should be fun. Again, thanks to everyone for watching. If you like listening to your podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, just search On the Sideline. That'll come up. Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gronin, and make sure that you follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK. As we are gearing up now, 141 days till NFL season.
Yes, 100. Yeah, feels like it's going to be just around the corner. It's going to be, hey, we better enjoy this time now. With hockey playoffs coming up, basketball playoffs already in the mix, the draft in a week. A couple months from now, we're going to really be missing this stuff. So we better enjoy it now.
Yeah. Who's the Jalen Brunson of this draft, aka the best player in the NFL or the NBA?
Wait, I don't think I understand get the reference.
Jalen Brunson, did you not see that, Matt? So I was at games 1 and 2 for Jazz Mavericks.
Okay.
Jalen Brunson had 41 points in game 2 on like 25 shots. He was insane.
Okay, gotcha. I missed that game. I've been watching, I don't know, Kyle, my 76ers looking pretty good.
Yeah, I kind of like Toronto to begin that series, but the problem is they don't have anybody the size to guard Embiid. And also, like, 3 guys got hurt in the first game.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, their second round opponent, Miami, is also looking pretty good. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, it should be fun. Again, that's what I like about just pick. If you don't have a basketball team, just pick one and bandwagon it. That makes it way more fun.
Basketball is more a player-driven league, anyways. I feel like there's more player fans than any other league. I mean, that's kind of what I am, so it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. And it is funny. It's like I almost root for them, like not quite like they're my team, but I do root. I legitimately root for James Harden, even though it's not even like I don't know what it would do for his legacy if they win now, because like he's not what he once was. I guess it would still help, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. He looks a little slower than usual. I'm a little concerned for the future of James Harden. I feel like this ring thing has to happen soon.
Yeah, this might be his last shot. It feels like.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned.
Maybe he's still just burning off some of that excess weight.
Maybe. Still working on that hamstring.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Again, that's your show, everyone. Kyle, do we have any final thoughts, or are we ready to go?
I think we're ready to go. Like I said, mock draft next Wednesday. Tune in.
Yeah. Charlie says, should the Panthers trade for Garoppolo in hopes he gets injured and the coaching staff gets another excuse to stay hired? Ooh, that's a good idea.
There you go.
Yeah, I like that. That's thinking outside the box, Charlie. I like that one. All right. Thank you to Charlie and everyone else who listened. We do appreciate it. And of course, until next time, see you later, alligators.
Peace.